Calvin Coolidge is the President of the United States. World War II has not happened yet. The TV does not exist. The year 1920, and that's likely the year that this tool was made. Most of your cities and industrial plants are going to be ran by steam power, and most of your pipe fitting and plumbing are going to be done with common hand tools like this. But amazingly, after 100 years, this tool still works exactly like it did 100 years ago. So in this quick antique tool guide, I'm going to show you how to identify your antique wrench. I'm going to show you what the difference is in a monkey wrench versus a pipe wrench, and I'm going to show you some of the restoration do's and don'ts. So let's get into it. All right, so let's say you're in your grandfather's old toolbox and you're rummaging through it and you pull out a couple of wrenches just like this and you're like, I don't know what kind of wrench it is, but I know it's a wrench. Or you're at an antique shop and you're going through all the antique tools and you find one you really like, but you're not sure what you're actually holding. Well, around the time that this wrench was designed, there were a couple of dominant wrenches, one of them being a monkey wrench and one of them being a pipe wrench. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at a monkey wrench first. The monkey wrench, the big difference, if you look inside of your jaws, they were going to be smooth, much like a modern day crescent wrench is smooth. The reason for that is nuts and bolts back in the day were extremely expensive to make, and they were going to be square, not hexagon like what we have today. So you didn't need anything but two smooth edges to grab a hold. That could be, parts on a wagon or wagon wheels. That could be in a factory. Wherever that you needed to actually tighten a nut and bolt, they were generally going to be square. That's number one. So if I end up pulling the same tool out and I see that it is smooth here and there are no teeth, then I'm automatically going to know that that is going to be a monkey wrench. Now there is something else different that will give it away almost every time. You'll notice on a lot of the old tools, monkey wrenches in particular, instead of having the actual open teeth on the upper jaw that slides back and forth, they actually had what was called a rack and pinion system, meaning that the teeth were cut into the actual handle and it rack and pinions and moves itself up and down more with a little set screw usually than a thumb wheel like this. So that would tell me right away I have a monkey wrench. Now that's not to say that nobody designed any pipe wrenches with that system, but they're not very prevalent. Let's put it that way. They are very, very rare and hard to find. So how do I know the difference in the monkey wrench though and the pipe wrench? What does the pipe wrench have that the monkey wrench does not have? Well, first of all, when you look at it, you look inside the jaws again, I've got those serrated teeth. Those serrated teeth are made to actually grab pipe and hold on. If I was trying to use a monkey wrench on this, like we'll say this is a monkey wrench, you tighten it as tight as you can, and no matter how hard I push, I can't turn the pipe. It's a pain. It doesn't work. So that's why they came up with this design. This is going to use a thumb wheel and it moves. Now, if you look at a modern one moves just as well. They build slack into it so that it can turn, and they actually take the upper jaw and generally make it a little bit longer. These bottom pieces are going to be replaceable, but it's the same thumb wheel. It has not really changed in over 100 years. So that is number one. I also, you'll notice on the old ones, they had these little springs on the side. And what those springs do is they actually allow it to move, but it also pops it back into place. So all of your pipe wrenches are made to grab, and as you put pressure, they tighten tighter. So that's how I'm going to know that they're, the difference in a monkey wrench versus a pipe wrench. So now I know that I do not have a monkey wrench, that I have a pipe wrench. I have serrated teeth. I have a worm gear with a thumb nut on the side to actually be able to move it up and down. So the next thing I'd like to know is who made it and kind of have a rough idea of when it was made. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to look for anything printed on the actual tool. Now this one has Pexto printed on it. So you can look up the Pexto brand and find out that that was Peck, Stow, and Wilcox. Now the actual stamp itself tells me an awful lot because before 1915, the company actually stamped all their tools with a P, an S, and a W and company. So I know that this would have to be after 1915. The next thing I'm going to look at is the made and the USA stamp directly underneath it. I know that between 1900 and 1930, that exports became extremely popular and most tools were going to be stamped with that made in USA. So it puts it in that same time frame. Now the next really telltale sign on this tool is going to be the wooden handle. Wooden handles were phased out in the 1920s. By 1930, most of the tools were going to have solid steel handles like this one. If you notice, these tools are exactly the same except the actual handle. Now, originally, the reason they would use these wood handles, it was a little more comfortable. It would also isolate your hands from the cold, but it was also a little cheaper because steel was expensive and the tooling that went into actually making this steel handle was a little bit harder at that time. So you're going to find around that time that actually from mid 1800s up to about 1930, these were very dominant. So that's going to tell me that this tool was probably made somewhere between 1915 and 1930. So now I've narrowed that range down. I know who made it, and I've got all of my stamps. Also, there's another stamp on here that is 14, which that basically is a size stamp. You're going to have this from another manufacturer that has the same 14. So they were the same basic size. Now there's one other really cool stamp on this. It has the stamp J. Hansen. Well, back at the time these were built, these tools were called lifetime tools. People spent a lot of money on these because these were going to be made one at a time by hand. They're not like modern tools. When you take a modern tool like this, they're going to be made from a die. Basically, they're going to pour liquid metal into a die, let it form, and then they make their tool out of that. These were going to be made with a very heavy steel and they're hammered. You're going to see hammer markings and things on this where it was actually put together. So these, like I said, were considered a lifetime tool. So your mechanics at that time would actually go ahead and have their names engraved. And this one was done really nice. It was not done by hand or anything. Somebody paid to have this engraved. And if things like your top jaw wore out or your springs wore out or your handle wore out, they would replace it and they would keep using this tool. They'd rock and roll on down the line and it would just last for decades. Let's go ahead and take a second and talk about the Pexto brand. Pexto was a very well-known brand that dealt with railroad tools, pipe fitting, industrial tools, even sheet metal tools. So what does the brand Pexto stand for? Pexto stands for Peck, Stow, and Wilcox. It's one of America's great industrial tool companies. The company roots go all the way back to the 1700s, but the modern company was formed in 1870 when three Connecticut tool manufacturers joined forces. That would have been Peck Smith Manufacturing, S. Stow Manufacturing, and Roy's Wilcox. They all joined forces to create Pexto. What started as a company making tools and machinery for tinsmiths quickly grew into a powerhouse, making plumbing, sheet metal, railroad tools, mechanics tools, factory and tradesman tools across the entire U.S. By the 1890s, the company was actually employing over 1,000 workers and became an industrial powerhouse. In the early 1900s, the company stopped using Peck, Stow, and Wilcox and started using the much shorter trademark name Pexto, which is what most collectors know today. Over time, Pexto became one of the best known brands in sheet metal equipment and hand tools. So what actually happened to the Pexto brand? The brand was bought and sold several times over the years and is now owned by a company called Roper Whitney. They specialize in sheet metal equipment and they consider the Pexto brand one of their legacy brands, and they still make equipment today with the Pexto brand on it. So while the tradesmen that originally used these tools are long gone, the actual Pexto brand is still around after 150 years. Okay guys, I hope you're enjoying this video on the Pexto pipe wrench, but I need a little input from you as to what you'd like to see next on tools before their time. I have other pipe wrenches like this one with the steel handles. I have these little miniatures, which I think are really cool. I call them little pocket wrenches because you can carry them around in your pocket. And I have a whole assortment of monkey wrenches from small to very large. I even have a wrench like this one, which is basically an old railroad wrench, and it has a center nut that actually controls the actual bottom jaw, just like that. And I even have blenders that you can do by hand. And believe it or not, I still use this type of a blender today for my hot mud a lot of times. A lot of times I'll use my drill with the actual battery powered blender, but a lot of times this is really nice and it would still work in a crunch. So guys, let me know in the comments what it is that you'd like to see next, and that's what I will film for the next tool before it's time. So let's go ahead and let's get back to the video. All right, so we've looked really close at the tool for stamps. We've looked at things like the wooden handle. We've dated this tool to be somewhere between 1915 and 1930. So we've got this in about a 15-year window. But there are a couple of the really interesting things about this tool that tell the story. Not only does it have the owner's name on it, and that's probably your original owner, but it has a lot of wear and tear that I can actually see how this was used. If you look at this back of these, they're very smooth. They're shaped like a hammer because a lot of times guys would close this off so it wasn't bouncing around, and you could actually double as a hammer with this. And you'll see all of the hammer marks on the back of it. I can see where nails and things were actually indenting into the actual steel over the decades. I'm also going to look at things like the teeth. Now, the teeth are very important because the bottom jaw actually gets most of the work and it will wear the most. So if it was used a lot of times you're going to find these tools where the bottom is almost rubbed smooth. And you're going to want to look at the top jaw because these were generally machined in a shop at the same time and usually hand cut into those little teeth because they didn't use a lot of the manufacturing techniques that we use today. So you can look at these and line them up and you can see if they line up the way they're supposed to. A lot of times, like I told you earlier, is, these would wear out, things would happen, the upper jaw would get broke or what have you, and people could replace that jaw. So they would actually pull that whole piece off and put another one. So if my cut lines aren't lined up, it tells me that it's probably not the original upper jaw. So that tells me a lot. And then I'm going to take a look at the patina on this. The patina is going to be the surface that is over it, all the oil. Why I'm wearing gloves? Because I keep these oiled up. But over the years, that is going to build up and it's going to get a lot darker. So that tells me that this is a true older tool. Let's take a second and let's compare the old to the new. All right, first thing is if you're looking at these, there's a huge size difference. So you're automatically going to assume that the new version is going to be a lot heavier because it's bigger. Well, actually, that's not the case. The small one is much heavier. The main reason is the way that they're built. This is going to be made one at a time by a blacksmith, where this is going to be made from a form. They're going to take hot metal, pour it in, let it dry, pull it out, and they're going to build their tool. But what that does is it makes the tool lighter weight because there's air pockets in that steel. That means that the steel can actually bend easy and it can snap in two. That's why this is maybe a 2-3 decade tool, and this is a 2-3 century tool. It's going to last much longer. Now, you're also going to notice that both of them are going to use the same type of a worm gear on the side with a thumb nut that you turn. So the actual system hasn't changed much. This one has springs on the side to help it go back into shape. This one, they just managed to give you a little extra play and a longer upper jaw. Overall, though, they still do the same thing. So the overall design really hasn't changed much, just the way that they're made. All right, so lastly, I'd like to talk about how you restore these. So if you're digging through your grandpa's toolbox, or you go find one of these in a antique shop and you look at it and it's covered in rust, it hardly moves, what are you going to actually do to put it back into good shape? Well, the first thing you don't want to do is sandblast. Never sandblast. First of all, it's going to erase a lot of the actual markings that you need, and it's going to make it look like brand new again, which is not what you're looking for if you want a collectible tool that a collector is going to want, because they want to see the patina, the actual oil, and the covering. They like looking for things like the dents on the side because it shows character, shows that it was a real tool and really used. They're going to look for things like the person's name, J. Hansen, on the side. That helps kind of date it because they know a lot of people did that in that era, but it also makes the tool very individualized. So what would you do to clean this and to get it working again? First of all, I'm going to, use some type of a light oil, maybe even a little bit of a WD-40 to break things loose a little bit, but I would finish off with a really good thin light oil, even if I use WD-40, because WD-40 is water-based and I don't like using it on my tools very often. So I'm going to do that to kind of break up the mechanism, get everything functioning the way it's supposed to again, and then I'm going to clean everything up around the name and stuff, but I'm not going to use an abrasive brush. I'm going to use something like maybe a brass brush because it's a little easier, maybe even a 0000 steel wool lightly. You don't want to take everything off. You just want to clean it up and you want to stop the rust. So that's how I'm going to clean that up. The handles, I will use the same oil on them because, to be honest, these tools have had oil on them for decades and that has probably soaked a lot of oil into it. Now, as far as value, what a collector is going to look for is he's going to look for that actual coating, the patina, and he's going to look for the handles, make sure that they're not snapped and broken up. You're going to look for movement, make sure that it's moving. On a tool like this, you're going to look at the springs and make sure they're attached because a lot of these, the springs are broken or even missing. And they're also going to look at the teeth, make sure that they match, that they were a matching set, and that they're not totally worn off. Those are all going to help, value the tool. A tool like this is probably going to run in value anywhere from 25 bucks to about 150 bucks. And some of your models that have a name brand that's a little less known but was patented are going to be worth even more. So those are some of the things you need to concentrate on if you're trying to put this back into working order, but yet maintain the value to a collector. So over 100 years of real everyday work, and this tool still works exactly like it did the day that it was sold. So do you think that old tools were actually made better than these tools, made to last longer? What's the oldest tool that you actually own? And lastly, do you guys enjoy seeing this type of content? Would you like me to make more content on the antique tools? Be sure you leave me comments and let me know what you think. And guys, if you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button, ring that little bell notification button. Matter of fact, ring it twice. You'll know about all my upcoming videos as I release them. And as always, I do appreciate you watching.